Dinosaurs are attacking, and it's a crisis.
The game has been rigged. Forget all the rules. Stop believing what you're told. All this hate that I feel for you, my one true enemy. Once was blind, but now I see. It makes me question why.
So I was talking about the game. Usually what I do is, do this during that, but I completely forgot somehow. So I needed to record a second take, just kind of over here. Hi, how are you? Thank you to my channel members and my Patreon followers, supporters, whatever. My patrons, you people, thank you so much. You are what make these videos possible, and I appreciate every single one of you. You better not forget, otherwise I'll remember for you. Take that. Also, links in the description, stuff you check out, stuff that you might not want to check out, History Channel, things like that, other stuff. I post on TikTok a lot now because I'm crazy like that. It's all the Gen Z, I gotta be cool like the kids. Hello, fellow kids. I'm getting too old for this crap. And, also, you better have a happy Halloween and be safe out there. Don't eat the weird candy from the weird dude. Probably has, like, I don't know. Just be careful, be safe. Yeah, take that. Aha! Alright, I've actually gotten questions about this game for years. Because people know that I, have reviewed horror games before, and I like dinosaurs. So one would have thought that I would have played Dino Crisis a lot sooner. It's funny. I remember seeing it like in my old rental shop back in my hometown and everything. It's not like I didn't know it existed. I just never tried it. It just, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the title, maybe it was I'm not really sure what it was at the time. So I really only started playing it recently. And it's a game. It's good. It is. It's definitely an underappreciated classic on the original PlayStation. I will absolutely give it to it in that regard. And in many respects, people tend to call it an RE Resident Evil clone or knockoff or ripoff. And I try to avoid the latter two terms because, like, ripoff implies that, like, it's another company taking one company's idea, but both games are made by Capcom. They're both, this is still a Capcom game, but it is clearly, heavily, unspeakably inspired by Resident Evil. The controls are basically the exact same in the overworld in terms of those old classic tank-like controls of Resident Evil, as well as the visual delivery in terms of, weird camera angles and stuff like that. They were going for a survival horror type experience. Except instead of zombies, it's dinosaurs. But to be honest, I really like that idea. Like, I adore the notion of trying to make dinosaurs scary. Part of the reason I really like Jurassic Park, and I think many people can attest to this, is my favorite movie ever, is that it was kind of scary sometimes. It was a thriller. Like, it had its moments of legitimate fear. I mean, the scene in, the substation with Ellie and the raptors chasing her was straight out of a slasher flick. So it's not like, this sort of thing hasn't been done before. And I think dinosaurs are at their best where they're not just hokey or campy, but actually legitimately terrifying on some levels. Like, you can actually take them seriously. Dino Crisis was shooting for this mood, and in at least the first half of the game, I think it nails it down pretty well. Has it aged super great? That depends on your opinion on these tank controls. For me, I never did really like this type of control scheme. Tomb Raider was like the only game that ever got away with it, for me. Because at least there, it was a platformer and I had to line up jumps, so I kind of got why it controlled the way it did. But in a game like Resident Evil or Dino Crisis, when you have to run away a lot, that can be very frustrating in some regards. But I do think it's a little more refined than the first Resident Evil. It feels more like Resident Evil 2 or 3, where, yeah, the controls are tanky, but it doesn't feel quite as stiff as it initially did. You can tell there's been some quality of life changes to try to make these awkward controls a little better, so I don't really mind it too much. The thing that really sucked me out of it, though, I'll be honest, was the voice acting, because it is straight out of RE1.
That's disgusting.
This guy's been eviscerated.
Yeah, looks like someone tried to make a evisceration sandwich out of him.
It's just, there are so many times where I was just outright laughing playing the game because it was, yeah, it's old. But putting all that aside, visually the game is pretty good for PlayStation. Nothing super, high res or anything, nothing amazing, but it's still pretty good. Everything looks right. I like the dinosaur designs. It's obviously Jurassic Park inspired. In fact, I'm pretty sure even one of the lines directly references the movie. It's obviously where they're taking their inspiration from, and that's okay. I don't mind that. We had a lot of Jurassic Park games, but a game being influenced by one of the greatest dinosaur franchises ever, you could be inspired by worse. There's worse cases out there. You ever see any of the Sci-Fi Channel original movies that are like dinosaur based? They're awful. All of them. Every single one. Don't actually watch them, please. So in terms of horror elements, it does seem to handle the dinosaurs well, where there are, freak out moments and, moments of dread and things like, you feel alarmed or scared and when you first start playing it. It's just that I don't think the Dino Crisis has as much staying power as Resident Evil did. It felt like in RE there was always more to discover, like there was always something else, something new that you weren't really expecting. In Dino Crisis, it never really changes. There are a few different new enemy types, but I think they kind of, give you the raptors too quickly. Like, raptors can be very scary, but as anyone who saw my, Jurassic the Hunted review, I am so frickin' sick and tired and just done with raptors. I don't mind them being in the game. They're a good enemy type, but I promise you, these are like the only things you're ever gonna see throughout the course of their game. There are some others. There are compies, there are some pterosaurs, and later in the game apparently there's a therizinosaurus that is woefully scientifically inaccurate, but it's there. But outside of those few occurrences, because the pterodons are like one area, and the compies are like 2 areas, it's always the raptors. Every single place you freaking go in this stupid laboratory is raptors, raptors, raptors. And early in the game, it was pretty scary. One of the things I actually love is that a big part of the game is actually running away, because the game does not give you nearly as much ammunition as you need to deal with these things. Like you can shoot them, and that's fine, it works, but the problem is that they take a lot of shots to go down, and you will never have enough ammo to take them all out. You won't. It won't. It will not happen. So you have to, run and try to escape, which is an interesting idea. I kind of like the notion that, you can't necessarily, just run and gun. After all, it's a survival horror game, so we want to, try to emphasize the survival elements. But say you, go into a room where, escaping a raptor who was in the hallway. They made it so that the raptors sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes will open the door into the room you just loaded into and come in after you. And the first time this happened, that freaked me the hell out, because I wouldn't have expected that out of a PlayStation game. I mean, obviously that's inspired by Jurassic Park, where the raptors figured out how to open doors, and I think that's great. But it legitimately, I was like, what? Wait, no, oh God, because now you're in this cramped room with this, horrific Cretaceous predator trying to rip your face off. And some of the kill animations are pretty rough, like Rick and Regina here gets ripped like her arm off and stuff like it's brutal. But the problem is all this stuff is gonna happen in the beginning of the game, whether it's the raptor jumping through the window, or the T-Rex showing up through the window, or the raptors following you through doors, like stuff like that. Most of it's gonna happen in the first, half of the game. So it wears off. You get desensitized to it. The horror elements do not have the capacity to stay with you because they're not varied enough. They don't spread them out enough. It just kind of poofs out. And eventually you just kind of like, oh no, another hallway with raptors in it? I'm so shocked. I don't know what I expect. Like, it's like, guys, And I plead with you, I know it's a PlayStation game, so I'm gonna give this one a pass, but like, Jurassic the Hunted had no excuse for this, and I have to be real with you, anybody who's trying to make a dinosaur game right now, there's plenty that are on indie stuff and everything like that. Let me assure you and promise you, and please, for the love of all that is holy, I don't care what you're doing, there are more predatory dinosaurs than just raptors. Okay? I don't care what you call them. I don't care if they're Utah Raptors or Pyro Raptors or, you know, Velociraptors who should be the size of chickens or whatever. Jurassic Park logic, fine with me, whatever. I don't care. Or Dinocrisis or anything else that looks similar. There are more than just these things, okay? Yes, this game offers a bit more, but still, like, I would have expected, you know, other things. And I'd say that maybe they were trying to be scientifically accurate because the plot of the game is that there's this weird third energy stuff that they're experimenting with, and you go into this professor or get him back, and the third energy is actually so powerful it unintentionally ripped up open a portal in time. And it kind of displaced the area where part of the area was swapped with an area from the Cretaceous period, which is why there's suddenly dinosaurs. And I get that, except for the little itsy bitsy problem that I can vouch for the Rex, and you know, if they're Utah Raptors, the Raptors, they would have inhabited a similar location, so I'll take that. Therizinosaurus, that's Asia. That's an Asian dinosaur. So no, not gonna work. Not gonna work. Sorry, that excuse will not fly. My point is that in a game like this, if you're gonna have a bunch of dinosaurs, just like, we're dealing with time travel. Don't even bother trying to be scientific. Who the hell cares? I cannot think of a single modern like dinosaur thing that is remotely based, like it's based in fact, but they obviously play fast and loose with logic in it. It's very difficult, you know, when you have all these dinosaurs from all over the world to suddenly have them all in one place. So I get that. You know, no, there's always some things, you know, weird going on. This is a weird game from a plot perspective. You know, it's got weird voice acting and a weird situation where suddenly dinosaurs. And honestly, when I first played it and I realized that it was based on time travel, I actually got kind of irritated because. And I understand how hard it is, because Jurassic Park did it, like, I don't think anyone can do it better than Jurassic Park. Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park handled the idea of dinosaurs being manufactured or cloned in a way that I don't think can be surpassed easily. And as someone who's been workshopping his own dinosaur novel for years, because I love dinosaurs and I would love to write a story about it and I have an idea, I have been desperately trying to avoid two things. I've been trying to avoid ripping off Jurassic Park, and I've been trying to avoid time travel at any and all costs, because the second you add time travel to any story, things get insanely difficult. Suddenly, you have to account for so many variables. Like, you can't just say, you know, they opened a portal in time and there were dinosaurs, which is pretty much what the game does. And in this context, I guess that's fine because it was unintentional, but like time paradoxes and butterfly effects, and like, if you're gonna take it at all seriously and actually write a cohesive tale, you have to account for stuff, and obviously they didn't really care about that here, and I get it because they just wanted an excuse for dinosaurs to be there. They didn't want to directly rip off Jurassic Park, so they just said the energy opened a portal in time and blah blah blah, which is fine. But my problem is that from a horror element, it doesn't stick around. By the end of the game, I just kind of got sick of it, where I was just like, oh no, there's more, terrifying. I'm so scared. Where the game does excel is in the first half in terms of horror, but also in the puzzles. I gotta give this game full props for the puzzles. A lot of the puzzles in like Resident Evil are super obnoxiously cryptic, to the point where it's like, how would anyone even deduce that that was the case? Like how, there's a lot of like that in Resident Evil where it's like, what? That worked? Really? But in Dino Crisis, a lot of the puzzles are not only, you know, very mentally stimulating, but actually fairly down to earth in terms of you kind of know what you're supposed to do. The puzzle is figuring out how to do it. And sometimes that can take quite a bit of time, but you never feel frustrated with it because you do know what you're trying to do. It's a lot different from Resident Evil in that regard, where the early games, I never really knew what I was trying to do from the get-go. I was just kind of doing stuff. but Dino Crisis handles it in a much better way, and I actually applaud this game in that regard. The puzzles are great. Like, really, legitimately so. I was very happy with the puzzles and the first half of the horror elements in the game. I do think there's a lot here that could have been improved upon. I did, for the most part, enjoy the game. Despite my criticism, despite my issues with the story or the second half of the experience, I did think that overall, this was a good game, and I just enjoy the notion that there is a game out there that is decent, that is, doing dinosaurs in a horror setting. Which is really hilarious for me to say, because the rest of the series is a freaking disaster. Some people like Dino Crisis 2, but it's way more of an action game. And if you just want to play an action game shooting dinosaurs, those are a dime a dozen. That's not what I signed up to this series for, Like, it's still just, running, oh god, just shoot them. It's like, oh no. It just doesn't feel as cool or as interesting as, a survival horror style game. Like, I feel like that was a much better way to go about it, because it made it feel distinctive. Like at that point, why not just play Turok? Okay, that's what I'm saying. But 2, if you're into that, I guess it's all right. 2 isn't necessarily a bad game. It just didn't do it for me. What really didn't do it for anybody is the following 2 games. So there's Dino Stalker, which is technically the only in-story canon that we can confirm sequel to Dino Crisis 2. It is a rail shooter, which is even worse than just a flat-out action game, because now it's... You have any idea how many rail shooters there were in the arcades featuring Jurassic Park that were infinitely better than this piece of crap? Because it's a lot, okay? Like, there's no reason to play this. Like, why would you do it in a rail shooter setting? It's not even a Wii title. Like, at least if it was a Wii title, I could say Umbrella Chronicles. They didn't even do that! Okay, so we're gonna put, what about Dino Crisis 3, the actual Dino Crisis 3? Yeah, so Dino Crisis 3 is literally System Shock 2. Well, with dinosaurs. But other than that, it's the same freaking game. It's about an AI that decides it's going to clone the humans on board. It's, the ship it's on, it's splicing it with dinosaur DNA and trying to create a perfect life form. And it's rooted in the last mission. The captain of the ship gave the AI, but it took it out of context and everything. But ultimately, you wind up with this derelict ship with a bunch of horrific abominations on it, and they're like part human, part dinosaur with a bunch of other stuff spliced in, and it's another freaking third-person action game, except it's set in the far distant future in space, and it barely features dinosaurs on the basis that nothing in this game is technically a dinosaur anymore, and it is insane. Like, nuts. Where did even the producers on the game said, and I quote, yeah, Dino Crisis 3 went off the rails. Yeah, oh, you think? What did you do? And it's frustrating, because I feel like Dino Crisis could be a cool thing. One of the things people have been saying since the RE remakes have been so good overall, is they would love to see a remake of Dino Crisis 1 and 2. I'm hesitant to say 2, but I definitely would love to see a modern take on 1, because I think with modern technology and updated graphics, you could enhance the horror elements of the game and actually make this a legitimately good survival horror game featuring dinosaurs. I would love to see that. Whether they do it, I don't know. It kind of stopped doing Dino Crisis after 3, although it was terrible, so I get that. But the other thing is that Capcom has gone on record saying that they're not really sure they need to light a fire under the franchise anymore. They don't really see the money in it. And I get it, it's more of a niche cult game, but there's rumors of Square Enix remaking Parasite Eve, which I don't want them to do. But if Square Enix can see the money in reviving their cult horror franchise, and the fact that Capcom has proven that remaking their old survival horror games, at least with Resident Evil, has been insanely good and profitable, I don't necessarily see a reason why the first Dino Crisis, at the very least, shouldn't be given at least one more shot. I understand production costs and money, and yes, they're a business, I know, but I would like to see it, because I'd be down for playing this game with modern graphics, modern controls, and a much better emphasis on the horror elements to make a true, proper survival horror experience out of this franchise, because I desperately think that that is the way this franchise could have been up there with Resident Evil. It really could have been something that was on a similar playing field, a similar level. But it's almost like they went for the RE4, 5, 6 route well before it was they were even close to, you know, being that far. Like Resident Evil did dip into action territory after a while, but it took them like 10, 15 years to really get there. Whereas Dino Crisis, I think started doing it midway in the first game, and then just progressively did it with every sequel. Like, it did it so quickly. And I know, like, survival horror games tend to dip into action eventually a lot, but I feel like Dino Crisis did it way faster than any other game I've ever seen in this kind of, genre. But hey, the first one, at the very least, I do think is really good and worth a try if you're into retro horror games. I wouldn't say it's the best thing in the universe. I think it in many ways needs a remake, but for at least the first half, you're in for some genuine scares, and there are some great puzzles. Plus, the voice acting is pretty entertaining. So, with that, till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fond farewell.